I want to read this because I thought this was fascinating what he said. The word priority came into the English language in the 1400s. It was singular. It meant the very first or prior thing. It stayed singular for the next 500 years. Only in the 1900s did we pluralize the term and start talking about priorities. Illogically, we reasoned that by changing the word, we could bend reality. Somehow, we would now be able to have multiple first things. People and companies routinely try to do just that. I would add, parents try to do just that. One leader told me of his experience in a company that talked of Pri 1, Pri 2, Pri 3, Pri 4, and Pri 5. This gave the impression of many things being the priority, but actually meant nothing was.
You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christi Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home.
Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. Today we're talking about priority versus priorities, which, especially coming up with the holiday season, I think is important. The new year, it's important. But we've been really asking ourselves a ton of questions, as you guys know, as we've navigated this whole journey of selling our house and, just figuring out what the journey the Lord has for us and for our family. And it's been a beautiful thing because we're realizing we're going to build an outpost. We're building one in Pennsylvania. We're building one in Tennessee. And, we're not building one in Pennsylvania. We are.
Well, we are establishing
we're establishing one is the right word. For when we're here. But we're building one in Tennessee that's our home and our place. But I'm excited. I got all kinds of ideas for that and what that's going to be and the vision that God is giving us for that. But I think what's important for us in this process is we've also really been asking questions about our lives, our routine, our family life, making sure that we live our message, I think is one of the most critical components for us in this whole journey. And I think it's always important that we take time to reflect on how we're living our lives. I think what's often troubling is we get granular. So we get so granular that we're running and we're chasing the fires. We're putting out the fires each and every day, but we don't take a step back to really look at our overall lives, how we're growing, how we are not growing, where we're stuck, where we're staying stagnant. And there's, as many of you know, we wrote a book called Essentialism recently. We're actually still kind of in it and just really kind of getting essential is the reality. And in that process, we're asking questions of priority versus priorities. And this is I just want to share this because this is how we will begin today's episode, is talking about priority versus priorities. I do want to say this, though, before we get into that. Priority number one for gentlemen is Leaders Heart Cohort. It is coming up February 26 to 29. We interviewed Matt Redman a couple weeks ago. We'd love for you to check that one out. We have an incredible series coming up with our dear friend, mentor, who we did these episodes with a couple years ago, but just really on the heart of the leader, the heart of connection, and with Bill Oakey. And he passed away in March, went to be with Jesus, and he's a mentor of ours. He has such wisdom, such insight. These are timeless interviews that we really want to introduce you to what Leaders Heart, the essence of what Leaders Heart is all about. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, these are, because it's the men that we're getting ready to have a Leaders Heart for, but we're doing the heart of trauma. These interviews are absolute gold. And if you are new to the podcast and you haven't listened to them, we did them back in 2020, but they'll be coming up here in a few weeks. All that to say, we're pushing towards the Leaders Heart Cohort, February 26 to 29. Check out the show notes, sign up and apply. We have a Leaders Heart Cohort coming up. We can't wait for you to join us, February 26 through 29, 2024. This is a 6-month cohort that begins just outside of Nashville in a retreat where we come together and we focus on the heart of the leader. We'll focus on the way that we lead and live from a whole heart at home and in our workplace. And one of the most important parts of this is we also do follow-up for 6 months. We do follow-up coaching calls together to really hone in and focus on who we're becoming as men. We would love for you to join us. Check out famousathome.com/theleadersheart. You'll see it in the show notes today. That's famousathome.com/theleadersheart, and submit your application. I cannot wait to talk with you and have you join us in February. We're also launching in the new year our group coaching. And so make sure that you sign up the interest form at the bottom. We will have more information about that in the new year as we prioritize our own lives. And this is part of what we're talking about today. Group coaching is going to be a big part of that. So make sure, men and women, sign up on the interest form so that you get the emails that you are interested when that comes available in the new year. And then it's 25 days of the Christmas story time. If you can pick up a copy of that, that'd be amazing as well. I'm just trying to prioritize all the priorities, which is really not the essence of what we're talking about. So,
which is antithetical to what we're actually talking about today. But
let me introduce this because Christy's going to do a lot of the talking.
I am.
Yeah, I've done a lot of it already.
You've done great. I like to listen to you talk.
Well, I like to listen to you talk. So I'm going to start by sharing a little bit of Greg McKeown, I think is how you pronounce it. He talks about this in Essentialism, and I think this is important for all of us. So again, just as we talk about what's happening in our lives and how we're living them to be famous at home, it's not that we're asking you to do what we're doing. It's that we are saying, hey, what is the Holy Spirit speaking to you about what he's walking us through, like about these principles? So we're not saying you need to do what we're doing. What we are saying is, I think we are living in a time and a place, which Greg talks about in his book, the discipline, essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less, is that we're pursuing more and more and more. And for you to do a self-evaluation, to actually evaluate kind of what this looks like for you, especially as we come up on the new year, we come up on the holidays, and your family's looking into 2024 and going, what can we prioritize differently? What can we do differently to bring us connection and purpose in the new year? So I want to write that. I want to read this because I thought this was fascinating what he said. The word priority came into the English language in the 1400s. It was singular. It meant the very first or prior thing. It stayed singular for the next 500 years. Only in the 1900s did we pluralize the term and start talking about priorities. Illogically, we reasoned that by changing the word, we could bend reality. Somehow, we would now be able to have multiple first things. People and companies routinely try to do just that. I would add, parents try to do just that. One leader told me of his experience in a company that talked of Pri 1, Pri 2, Pri 3, Pri 4, and Pri 5. This gave the impression of many things being the priority, but actually meant nothing was. So, and I could go on and I could read this, but this is where he goes on and he talks about Bronnie Ware when she recorded those who were in the last 12 weeks of their lives, what their most regrets were. And at the top of that list was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And with that said, I think for us in our own lives, we have realized that we've done this. I mean, it's priorities.
But haven't we all? I mean,
not priority.
I think that's been the culture. I mean, you get on social media and it's like all the TikToks or Instagrams or Facebook. I'm actually I'm on TikTok. I'm not, but
however, I was listening to the All In podcast yesterday. Love the All In podcast. Just economic stuff. But one of the things they said, 75, I can't remember the amount of people, I think 75 million Americans are on TikTok. Like if you want to, like their whole point was, if you want to reach people today, you got to be on TikTok. Like that's where the younger generation is. That's where people are, is you've got to be on TikTok. And I mean, I'm not going to be on TikTok, so I don't know how many people will actually reach, but
like it's like this never ending stream of like things that you should do better and be better at, right? Like if it's, like the 5 things to do every morning when you wake up and the, health things or whatever. It's like this never ending pursuit of better and more, because you could always, this person's an expert in this person's expert in that. And, I need to integrate that. I should really be working on that. So it just feels like this never ending pursuit of I could do better. And I think that is where priorities comes in, because you're like, there are so many things that I should prioritize in my life. Because if I focus on one, it's to the neglect of everything else. So if I focus on my physical health, that can be to the point of, idolization. And then I'm almost living even in fear, or I'm not prioritizing my family, my relationships, my work. So I think that's where this constant bombardment of information of how other people are living or are telling you that you should live is so not just confusing, but like it's so pressuring. And that pressure, I think, is what produces these priorities, because you're so aware that other people are emphasizing things that you're not.
Well, and I think that's where I honestly think that's where we have such an increase in anxiety in our culture, and even among kids today, is because we're prioritizing so many things,
Right.
and our kids feel that pressure, and it's a trickle down effect, and we're all just ramped up all the time, because there's like, I even think about my monk manual, right? Like, so I keep this monk manual, and it's got my list of things to do for the day, and it's listed. I love it because it's listed 1, 2, 3, and then there's a to-do list under it of like like things that don't necessarily need to get prioritized. And so I'm able to prioritize number 1, and then number 2, number 3, and so on and so forth. But I know each day what number 1 has to get done. But I think that's the component of this, is if you have 1 in your day, and then 2 and 3. So I'm getting my daily stuff done, my 1, 2, and 3. And then if I get 1, 2, and 3 done, and I don't get the bottom part of the rest of the to-dos, the 4, 5, and 6 that aren't labeled but are down there, it's like, okay, now that has to jump up to number 1 tomorrow. Whatever you don't get done, that gets to number 1 tomorrow. But we get so granular and so in the here and now that we don't pull ourselves out. So we get our to-do list, our daily to-do list, that we don't pull ourselves out to look at overall. Are the daily decisions, or the daily quote-unquote priorities, leading to the overall priority of how I'm living my life? And I think that's what Greg's getting to when he says, hey, Bronnie Ware writes that, of the greatest regrets of the last 12 weeks of life is, I wish I would have lived the life that I would have liked to, rather than what others expected of me. And I think those daily priorities end up becoming imposed upon us, because it's what everybody else is doing, as Christi's talking about. It is, everyone else is doing this, and so why shouldn't I be doing this, and so on and so forth. But the reality is, why? I don't think we step back and go, well, why are we doing the way that we are?
Right.
And why are the priorities that I'm listing in my monk manual each day the priorities that they are?
Right.
What should they be different? Why is podcasting in there? And these are some of the questions we've been asking. Why is podcasting in there? Why is that a priority? Why is coaching a priority? Why is playing with my kids a priority? Playing chess with Landon, playing checkers with Kennedy, playing Monopoly Junior with Micah, watching a show or having quiet time with Christi. Why are these priorities important? And and it's only been recently that I've actually started prioritizing the games and the time with Christi. Whereas before, it's all work priorities. It's all to-do priorities. It's all, getting kids here and there and us, and so it's like, now wait a second, are we actually, and that's true. Like, I only recently started prioritizing the other stuff. Am I building in workout? Am I building in, the things that actually lead to a holistic life that I desire? Or is it filled with stuff that really isn't bringing our family life and joy and peace? And so these are the conversations I think that are important to have as we close the year, that are as we start the new year. And these are conversations Christi and I have been having. And it's led to her saying to me, I need to prioritize. My number 1 priority is the kids, right? Like,
yeah,
they are the number 1 priority. And so,
yeah.
But how we get to that priority is, and I think you have to pay attention to the environment of your home. I think you have to pay attention to, you have to be able to slow down enough to pay attention to what's going on, enter your kids' worlds, and then start working backwards almost as you pray into it and that type of thing.
Good.
But let's get into that. Yeah.
Well, how long do we have? This is I'll synthesize it as much as I can, but I think it's just been this long felt process. Not like I've I've felt it for a long time. And I don't know that I've been able to articulate it, but I felt it. I felt the mental overload. I felt the being torn in so many directions. I felt the pressure, I guess, to do all the things or be all the things. And there was a season where I was totally graced for it. Like I was able to homeschool the kids and work, like, and when I say work, I don't even really consider what I do work, but I guess it's not, I guess it technically is. So, we'd do the podcast, we'd write kids books. I'd do sessions with women and couples, and we do intensives. And, I loved it. I still do actually. And I've realized part of that caused a pace of life for me that it felt hurried, because I'd hurry to get school done so that I could, because I'd have sessions in the afternoon, or it's like you're trying to plug in so many things. And it wasn't, I'm saying I'm prioritizing the kids because I am, but I realized in order to do that, I have to prioritize me and my pace of life and my peace. And part of that has been me realizing through my own, even just work with clients and my own trainings, and understanding how the pace of life is causing this response in all of our bodies. But it's like we're living in fight or flight, a lot of us, or we're staying there longer than we should be. And the effects they're powerful. I mean, they affect our physical bodies. They affect our mood, our even just outlook on life. Like it's like everything's something that has to get conquered or get done, rushed through, like endured. And I just have been in this wrestle of like, I don't think that's what he came for. When Jesus said, I came to set the captives free, I think we've realized we're captives in more ways than we know. We're captives to the culture and the pace and the expectations. And, I'll have women say to me all the time, like, we're just doing the things that like everyone else is doing, i.e. like what the kids are involved in, or, as a family, and the work or the school or the culture or whatever. And it's like, I mean, it's not like we're doing anything else, as if I shouldn't have any more grace for me. Like we're not doing anything abnormal, but I think as a culture, we're doing something super abnormal. I think we're racing at a pace that's unsustainable in the way that it affects our actual health, bodies. I think we're going to get to the end of it and be like, shoot, that was a race to nothing. Like, what did I miss?
Well, and I had a friend say to me, and you may have heard me say this recently, but I had a friend say to me, he's an avid listener of the podcast and is becoming a friend, but he said to me, if my life looks different, or if my life looks the same as everybody else, I'm doing something wrong. If I'm looking around me and I'm seeing that my life is the way that I'm raising my kids, we're doing something wrong. And I think there's something to be said for that. I really do. And because of the effects of how everybody's raising their kids right now. I mean, you look at and you go, is this what we want? Is this the outcome we're desiring? And it requires a paradigm shift. And it requires, there's some cognitive dissonance there. There's some, fear that can underlie that, because it's like, well, wait a minute, what does that actually mean for how we change our lives and live our lives?
Right. For real.
And for us, it's been a gradual process, and I think it is. But I think the goal is to play the long game. And as Christi's talking about, there's more currencies than just money. There's more currencies than finances. And to think that, the decisions that we make, especially in how we lead our family, it absolutely influences our finances, because it influences what we say yes to, even from our, the business side. I could be going out and running hard and probably making a lot more money, but at the same time, I'd be neglecting my family. And, the third greatest regret that Bronnie Ware talks about is, I wish I wouldn't have worked too hard, or I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard. Of the people that were in the last 12 weeks of their lives said, I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard. And
part of that generally is cultural. Like if you are from a Western culture, that's just what we see. You don't see that around the world. So we're so influenced by.
But I think too, I will say this. I think it's not that other people around the world, I mean, European countries definitely don't work the way the Western world does. But historically, people were hard workers, but they're doing it as a family. It's a family business. So you're working, but you're not doing it at the expense of your family. And I think that's part of the key of going, how are we living our lives? And the Western world is just not designed for that. The Western world, right. And so this is no judgment. This is just like an eye-opening, okay, how do we do this? How can we integrate more of our kids into our lives? And especially if we send them to school and that type of thing, how can we do a better job of that? I think those are the questions we want to ask.
Yeah.
We're just part of the culture that we find ourselves in. And so we just have to, I think, ask the tough questions.
Yeah. But for me, what it's been like these last months after we left Tennessee, we came here to our little house in the big woods, which is what we call it, affectionately so. It's been, I was telling a friend the other day, like it's been like a cave season for me, a cave-like season anyway, where it's been quieter and I needed it to be. I don't think I realized how much I needed it to be, but I have. And so because it's small, like it's a small life, and I mean that in like every sense of not just small living, it's small. Like we don't have we have family here, but we're not involved in things. We're not, attending this and that and this and that. We have that in Tennessee, and that's good and rich and deep for those seasons. But I think this has been an opportunity to live an entirely different mode of life that has been a gift. I think it's been hard in its own ways. It's been hard for the kids actually to adjust to because they're used to friends and this and that and community all around them. And here it's like, but I'm missing my friends and we've really wrestled with that even as parents. Like, are we taking them away? And I have felt the Lord reassure me like, this is better. And I don't mean that having friends is not good, but you strip away all the highs of life, like all of the like sparkly things that we just do, like all our uppers. And you actually get down to how we really are when we strip away all the like things that bump us up, like all the exciting things. And I think as parents, it's a huge trap that we can get into, thinking that those uppers, like the trip to Disney, the whatever, like getting them in this sport or this thing, like, because it just keeps upping them, right? It's like the things we do to give us that little boost of confidence or excitement. But it's not, I'm not saying it's not real. I almost was about to say it's not real, but it's a false sense of life. Like
it can create a false self.
Yeah.
I think those things lead to our false selves.
Whereas you strip all that away, and that's painful and that's hard because then it's just you. You're left with just you. And how are you when you're just alone? How are you? Do you experience joy in the little things of life? Like we have this little bird feeder right out here, and to watch the little birds, they finally found us, and to come to the bird feeder, like,
the kids notice it all the time.
They're like, look at the one with the little red head, and to see them experiencing joy in the little things of life. They just plowed the field down here, and they're, running through with the 4-wheeler, and they're picking up cobs of corn that were left. And it's like, they want to play video games and watch TV and go to all the things like everybody else. But I'm watching them strip away these uppers, and I'm praying that it's establishing in them a deeper thing, so that when they're adults, when they're teenagers, when they're in college age, that they're not looking for the next high, that they're content in being in solitude. They're content in being deep in relationships. They're content in reading a book, in journaling, in making things with their hands, in coming up with creative things to do, because they're not propped up by all these uppers all the time. And so I think it's not a work that's easy, even for us. But when we're stuck in that mode of life, nothing different. It's actually like, it feels like I have a friend who calls it like a wet, itchy sweater. It's like putting on a wet, itchy sweater and you're like, ew, gross. I don't like this. Like, ew, this isn't me. And that's what everything feels like when you're trying it for the first time, and let it happen. And that's where, like, when I get to sit with women, like, that's the gift of it. It's like they hate it at first. It's a wet, itchy sweater because it's so uncomfortable either going into emotion or talking about it or getting real about how life has affected them and what they want to do about that and where they want to grow. It's not easy. And if it was, we'd all be like flying high, content all the time, peaceful, full of joy, but we're not. We're a people that are despondent and despairing and feel hopeless and have no peace and are striving all the time. And that's what I don't want. And so this has been a really powerfully reflective time for me. And so with that, I said to Josh, like, I'm looking at my weeks and like how I'm spending time. And I just said, I feel like there's a shift coming and I need to make a decision about what I prioritize. And I want to prioritize the time with my kids because I know I don't get this back. That'll make me cry. But that's one thing I know is true. Like, you can't rewind the clock. You don't get this again. I can do other things later, and that's great. And I will look forward to it, and I will love it. But for right now, I'm just sensing this call home. And so we talked about what that would look like. And I said, I still love my work with women. But even with that, it's hard to serve a lot of women because it's just labor, like time intensive. Like, I'm spending an hour to 75 minutes with one woman diving deep in their story, which I love. And yet, and it's powerful and it's changed me, and I pray it's changed them. And yet, in just terms of like time, I was like, I think I could do this better, because I often am repeating myself. I'll find myself, talking about concepts that like I could serve more women in a group setting and maximize my time that I'm with the kids, but also it doesn't need to be just a one-on-one journey. We can invite community in, and it's really powerful when women are there for one another and realizing they're not like, we all think we're crazy and we're, only I'm struggling with this. And obviously that's not true. So what I'm saying when it's shifting the priority of time and that feeling of hustle culture. Like, I just want to do less things well. And that means doing less things. And so we've talked about
disciplined pursuit of less.
Yes. Someone wrote a book about it, I guess. And I've just really resonated.
Yeah,
with
I think, and it's created a lot of conversation and prayer through our family and between us, especially as it relates to Famous at Home and what that looks like. Because obviously, I need to figure out a plan for business model. I mean, there's always that, but then also too, how are we serving people and how are we serving you all really, really well? And so those have been the questions. So the group model is a really great model for us to be able to do that and multiply what we're doing and be able to serve more people and also be able to use less time. It's more with less is really what we're doing, because we want to live our message. And we've always done this. We've always paid attention to the currency of our home and how it's influenced. And there's been seasons where, I mean, if you're just from a speaking standpoint, Christi and I get invited to speak together a lot, but in the season of life, it's a pretty easy no for me to go, yep, no, because we set a boundary on that we do it locally. And there's like maybe 3 events a year that Christi and I will do, but they have to be driving distance and they can't be, longer than one night away. And so those are it's just because it's a season of life we're in. There's going to come a day where our kids are out of the house, they're adults, and we'll have more bandwidth to do that, but we'll also have credibility and more credibility to do it because we've made these decisions now. And so the podcast is one of those. It's why you'll start hearing more interviews coming up. And I'll be leading a lot of those interviews. And so we want to get other people, other voices speaking into being famous at home. We'll have those voices coming into the podcast in the upcoming weeks. And, we interviewed our kids, and, there's creative ways that we're going to be doing that so that Christi is free to make the priority the kids in this next season. And so
I think
that's
too,
the key.
It's releasing the burden of like there's so many voices, like there's so many people that can speak into our message. It's not just us. We've never thought it was.
Right.
But it's easy to put a burden on you that like, but then I'm disappointing someone, or I'm, I should be. And I think that's where it was for me for a long time. It was like, well, and I even just disappoint Josh. Like, I don't want him to do this by himself. And I'm not, and hear this, like, I'm not, like, it's not goodbye, see you later, I'm out. It's not that. It's just shifting, and it's going to be different.
Shifting the priority rather than having priorities.
Yeah. And so I think too, with the group model, it allows me to be more of myself. Like, we do have to be careful what we say on a podcast that gets put on YouTube. We do have to be careful how much we disclose about really personal things. And when you're in a group, a safe group setting, like, you don't have to. And so Josh knows how many times he has to edit me on this podcast because I say things and he's like, you probably shouldn't say that. And all my friends probably are like, that makes sense for you. I don't filter super. I don't know. I'm just who I am, and I don't pretend to be someone I'm not. So, but I do realize in this world that we live in, it's probably wise to be careful how much you say sometimes. So, even in that way, I feel like it's just more suiting to me, and we can still, I'm sure I will do the podcast again. And,
New Year, we've got stuff coming up, and
it's just less. And so,
so I think the big thing for us was saying to you guys, like, if you see Christi not on as much and there's interviews with just me, it's because we have changed the priority, and we're making that word singular as a big whole, because we don't want to live, as Christi teared up, you get one chance at this. And we don't want to look back in those last 12 weeks of our lives going, I wish we would have lived the life we wanted rather than what others expected of us. Yeah. And so I hope that this episode is, more than anything else, is giving you permission to do the same. It's giving your family permission to do the same. That's what we want to do. We pray a spirit of freedom in your family.
Yeah, amen.
Spirit of freedom, a spirit of joy, and a spirit of peace. And we've talked about this before. You have to war for peace. You have to fight for it. And a lot of that fight is against the cultural mandates, implicate all the cultural, what feel like mandates, cultural demands that are being put on us, that we have to be able to step back and go, now, wait a minute, is this what's best for our family, for Team Straub, for Team fill in the blank as you listen?
And I hear like the voice, I don't know who it is listening, but where it's just that, well, that must be nice that you have the, you can just step back. And I want to just be clear that this comes at a sacrifice for us too. I don't want you to be like, wow, you're set up for this. You're fine. No, I want you this is, financially speaking, this is a like fleece on the ground to the Lord, and like, okay, God, you're asking us to do this, and we trust you. And this is all we've ever done, truthfully. We trust you with our finances and our business, that you will sustain it somehow as we follow you. And I don't say that to puff us up or like, look at your faith. I'm saying that for everyone who's listening, who's like, I don't know how to I want to make a change, but I feel stuck. Like, this is where faith steps in the gap, because if he's asking you to do it, he will be faithful to provide. That's who he is. And I say that with the authority that I do, only because we've had to test it so many times. And he has been every time. It doesn't mean it's not still scary and you're still like, gosh, how's this going to work? Like, we're not really quite sure. It's like moving. We were like, not really sure what this is going to look like. And you do it anyway. And I think that's what a life fully lived is like. Like we've all tried to be safe for so long and keep ourselves, obviously we're prudent and we're wise, but then there's times where he asks you to do stuff and you just obey because that's our job as disciples. And then that's when he gets to be God. And so I just say, I hope that encourages people too, because I know so many people feel stuck, like they don't have choices, and that is the enemy. That's when he says like captives. That's when we get to become captives, because a captive is someone who is innocent, but is being held against their will. Whereas a prisoner is someone who is guilty and is being held, probably also against their will. But Jesus came for both. He came to set the captives free and to let loose the prisoners. So whether or not we're walking innocently or we've totally messed up, I mean, he's still coming for our freedom. And to all of you who feel that stuckness, like there's no choices, like it feels like the pressures of life are crushing me in, I would just spend a little time there in actually processing with the Lord what is truth and what is a lie, because freedom is always on the other side of our obedience.
Boy, with that said, we're going to end with that thought. And I'll just say, men, if this is the type of life that you're wanting to pursue and you're trying to find that, those healthy rhythms between leading at home, leading at work, living free, leading your family well, check out Leaders Heart Cohort. We do have some interviews coming up with Bill Loki in a few weeks, who helped co-found and start Leaders Heart with me. He's got some incredible insights as well. And I would love to invite you into that. And again, if you're interested in the group coaching that we're going to be having coming up, these are the things we're doing. These are the things we're leading families in. We just get to go deeper than what we do on a podcast. And so make sure that you're signing up on the interest list. This is just an interest list. We'll send the email out for what the structure is going to look like, what the payment plan is going to look like, what the week's going to look like, all those things. And by the way, we have questions on that interest form that are really speaking into how we're going to structure this and what we're going to charge. So please make sure you fill out the interest form and answer those questions, because they're giving us feedback on how we set this up. So we really appreciate you guys. We love you guys. We obviously can't wait to see you guys again. We'll be back here again next week. But as you enter this holiday season, please hit priority instead of priorities and really seek the Lord on that freedom that Christi was just talking about. Until next week, keep in mind that the greatest red carpet that you will walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home.